Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Ivana De Maria. Ivana is doing some amazing work, so I'm excited to have her on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, be sure to check out the Shop tab, where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Ivana De Maria. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Ivana De Maria. And Ivana is an actress, producer, and founder of the new app StoryPlace, a story sharing app that I really think is incredible. And I'm excited for all of you guys to go download it and check it out. But I'm excited for Ivana to talk about her own personal story, what inspired the creation of StoryPlace, and how story sharing is such a crucial component of overall human connection and mental health. So, Ivana, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited, and I love that introduction. That's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And before we, dive into all the awesome work that you're doing, let's start with your own story. First off, where you're from and how your personal and professional experiences growing up really led you to being passionate about storytelling and the power that it has.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Mexico. I actually was born in California, but I never lived here. I was raised in Mexico City my whole life, well, until I was 15. And then I went to school in Switzerland for 3 years, for boarding school, actually. And then I went to college in Boston for 4 years.
Wow.
So I've been moving a lot at a very young age. I've always loved exploring the world, traveling, seeing other places. I think that it really opens your eyes to the fact that there's so much more out there that you don't know. And then, well, after college, I moved to LA. So now I live in LA. And yeah, I mean, I studied finance and law, and then I went into acting, and then I started producing because I wanted to create my own content. It really started from that. I thought I was only going to be acting, and then I hated the whole essence of how it worked in LA and the industry and the system, and how I essentially had to be waiting for people to give me opportunities. So I decided to start creating my own content and start telling my own stories, which meant that I would be writing and producing and acting.
That's awesome.
So I opened my production company and I started doing short films. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was very eager to learn. And then I started also just producing and not always acting, and then sometimes acting and not producing as well. And so sort of depends on the project, really. But in the end, it's all about storytelling as a whole. And that's also how I ended up launching an app, which I really never thought I would be doing. And it's because I really am curious about people. I'm curious about the stories that are, all around the world that haven't been told. And I realized that story sharing more so, is a really powerful tool that sometimes, and especially now with social media, it's being overlooked. With social media, we have the potential to promote empathy all over the world because we have platform and tools to really connect with people and communicate. And the level of connection the level of communication that we have available is really incredible. However, it also requires a lot of responsibility that sometimes, unfortunately, people don't realize. So social media along the way somehow, in my opinion, became incredibly egocentric, and it became a lot about competition and mental health issues and selfishness, and more than anything stemming from a creation of a false sense of truth. And so creating this false sense of truth and then having a loud voice on social media and not using it responsibly has led to really negative results from social media. I'm not saying entirely everyone, but in a great part. And so I wanted to create a platform that would take all of the things from social media that make it such a potential for promoting empathy and for making this world a better place, stripping it of the things that are purely just to feed the ego, and essentially creating a platform where people could really share truth, where they could really share true stories, the stories that make us human, the stories that are relatable, and also, more importantly, the stories that have a lesson to teach everyone, because everyone's story has something to teach someone else. And that's something that is not to be taken lightly, because it really has the potential to create a world of more empathy, which I think is something we desperately need.
Absolutely. No, it's so powerful. And I love how you just talked about social media as a whole, but it's crazy with social media, right? Because even though it is such a big world, it's really not anymore, because we can get in contact with people all over the world and really form relationships and communicate with people everywhere. So it's a smaller world than it's ever been before, and we can communicate with more people. And I mean, just as humans, like that's what we're made to do, right? Is to communicate and share and love people that are everywhere, regardless of language or, what maybe somebody's gone through that somebody doesn't fully understand on the opposite end of the spectrum. But like you said, stories are so powerful, because like when you have a story that really draws emotion from somebody, that's how you can change somebody's perspective, or that's how you can inspire change with somebody. And I think it's just incredible. It's so, like even with talking with people that have come on this podcast, I've had people that have come on that have lost hundreds of pounds, and like somebody could listen to that and take away something that just draw from their emotions or whatever that person has done, and they can take it into their own lives. And it's crazy to me how powerful it is. You can throw out the facts all day, but once you affect somebody's emotions with a story, like that's how you really change them.
Yeah, I agree. And also, it's about, I think that the equation to empathy is really about separating listening from agreeing, and understanding that just by acknowledging the fact that we have stories to tell and that we're all made up of different stories and that they're as valid, we're on the right track,
Absolutely. And especially with everything that's happening right now, it's like storytelling is so, like, it's so needed. And that's why I love what you're doing with your
and
app.
it's also so simple, it's the most primitive form of education. It's something that is not new to us. It's just been lost. I was talking very recently, and also what you said is very important, because I think it has a lot of potential, especially in wellness and health.
Yeah.
I think it's something that, when people share stories, you get inspired, you learn, you realize that it is possible. There's so much potential by sharing and listening to other people's stories. And very recently, I realized something that blew my mind entirely. That was that young generations don't even know what a story is anymore. Because I was talking to these kids and I was explaining StoryPlace, and I said, so you share stories and this and that. And they said, well, what do you mean by story? And I was confused. And I said, well, what do you mean? What do I mean by story?
You mean it's the Instagram stories, right?
Yeah. And they said, oh, so it doesn't disappear in 24 hours? I was like, what?
What is this?
It blew my mind, because I was like, whoa, I have to take 20 steps back and start off by defining, hey, listen, so this is a story, A story is an experience, an anecdote, a memory, like all these things that make up who you are. But the thing is, people actually think that they're sharing stories right now. They think that they're sharing so much of them already. And so this part of you that, that needs communication or relationships or whatever is being fed by almost a placebo, because you're not actually sharing any truth or a story, really. It's just snippets of your day that disappear.
Yeah. It's just like that top layer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were just talking about how it affects overall health. And I think it's such an important part of it. I mean, we're seeing more mental health issues than ever before. And I really think it's, I don't want to put all the blame on social media. It's definitely not. It's just,
it's fueled. Yeah.
But it's fueled by that. Exactly. And but I think in a large percent of it, it's people feeling like they're not heard and they're not understood. And a lot of that's just not expressing emotion on a deeper level that is so easily done by just writing or talking or.
Of course. And also, the fact that this false sense of truth that I was talking about, it really, I mean, it is really fueling these mental health issues, because you see things like, yeah, sure, you have the most classic case of the, Facetune pictures. You see all these people putting pictures that are so edited and so, and saying, oh, this is me waking up. Oh, this is me walking down the street. And then you get all these young girls who really believe this, and who really look up to these girls. And these girls that are posting things don't realize the responsibility that is in their hands when they have a million teenagers following them and listening to everything they say. And so they create this false sense of truth that is essentially unattainable. And so obviously it creates incredible insecurities of these girls that are, trying to do anything to become these pictures that they're seeing.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And, for you, Ivana, like, you speak multiple languages, right? And you've lived all over the world. Like, how do you feel like that's impacted your ability to tell stories and also understand where other people are coming from? Because you have a very big advantage over a lot of people, because you've seen so much from other cultures and you understand innately we are all the same, inside. We all have stories we want to tell. Like, how has that affected you? Just the combination of knowing so many languages, living so many places, and having just different experiences like that.
Immensely. I think it's a huge part of it's changed my life completely. People know what they know, like they know what they see, they know what they've seen. And so, a lot of times people criticize other people because, I don't know, maybe they create content only about one topic, or they only write about this thing, but it's really because that's all they know. And so once you open your eyes and start realizing, you travel, and I think traveling is essential for anyone, because, and it's not even about, going across the world. It's just getting outside of your comfort zone and realizing that there's other cultures, that there's other traditions, that there's other languages, that there's other beliefs, and that they're as valid as yours, which is the most important thing. And so that really puts your opinions into perspective, which I think makes you just a little bit of a more understanding person, in terms of knowing that, that your opinion is not the way to do something. And it also, you realize that the opportunities of learning are endless. I always try to, it's a very typical question when people say, do you work or do you study? And I don't think I'll ever stop studying, hopefully, because I'm genuinely on a constant, never-ending path of learning new things. I think we have so many opportunities of learning new things that it's a shame to just, once you finish school or whatever, to just focus on your work and not have curiosities about the rest of the world and about other aspects. I like learning languages because I think that it's an incredible thing. It's a beautiful thing. And it also connects you to so many more people. It opens the doors to a whole other, target of stories. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm so fascinated with just the process of learning other languages right now. And that's like right. I have so much respect for people that learn other languages too now. It's a combination of, one, I'm in the very beginning stages of learning Spanish, and it's hard when you feel like it's so new, but it's exciting, because then you, like you said, it just kind of expands your mind to other cultures and just more people that you can reach and help, and just opens the world like that. And then, second is, I have a 3-year-old daughter. So I like, it's cool it's cool, like, learning Spanish right now and watching her just learn more English just in general.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, how is she learning English? Because I'm not like drilling her every day and all of a sudden she can have conversations. So I'm like, okay, she's learning from music. She's learning from being around us. She's learning from if there's something on TV, and just taking in stories, whether it's in those forms of being around people or music or movies, and the ability for that to just, you learn and grow. And like, that's how all of us learn and grow.
Of course. I think the most valuable thing you can give your kids is a new language. They'll hate it every day when they're learning it. But believe me, growing up, you're like, oh, thank God for those random classes,
Exactly. I know, it's funny. Like, I've been teaching her random words just as I've been doing, like, I have like an app that I'm going through. And it's like, it was hilarious because yesterday she's like, hey, ¿cómo estás? I was like, what?
That's so cute. I love it.
Yeah. No, so it's like, it's crazy how powerful it is. And I definitely want to talk a little bit more about, or a lot more about StoryPlace. First off, what people can find and what they can expect.
Obviously, when I started doing this and I was like, I want to create ego-less social media, everyone's like, what? Like, that's so contradictory in itself.
Right.
And I understand you can't entirely strip the ego out of really anything, and also you can't force someone to be egoless. However, I think that you can sort of like redirect where that ego is being fed from. What is it being fed from? Is it, instead of it being your selfies and how many followers you have, or your likes, or your whatever, how you look, it's more so about, let's feed the ego with, with admiring or respecting or liking the stories that genuinely make you human. So it's really, StoryPlace is a platform. It's a very easy platform to use. It's not meant for writers. It's meant to actually not intimidate the non-writers. So you don't need to be a blogger. You don't need to be a writer. You don't need to actually know how to write. You just need to have a story to tell, which we all do. So in the app, you download the app, you create your profile, you choose a pen name, which is really like your writer's name, your pseudonym. So sure, you can use your real name if you want, but we also like the idea of having an identity without it having to mean you. Because I think that one of the reasons why a lot of people don't share is because of privacy matters. So we have that opportunity to be anonymous while still maintaining an identity within the app. And then for example, one of the things that, the ego feeding elements of social media is the competition. So here you cannot see somebody else's numbers. You can't see if someone, how many followers or how many likes or all these things that you usually measure social media from. You can see your own for connectivity and communication purposes, but you can't see other people's.
That's awesome.
And so with these little things, it's really about starting off very bare in terms of the elements that social media has, because I'm really trying to see, adding certain things at a time to not fall into that ego place. So for example, right now it's only in written format. Mm-hmm. Eventually, maybe, depending on how the app, develops, we'll add a voice, kind of like voice stories, or maybe some video, or maybe some images. But I really want to make sure we don't fall into the same problem that social media somehow fell. So all of the stories that people write are categorized by topics, and they're like further categorized by subtopics or tags. And every story is pinned to the location where the story took place on a map. So essentially creating a map of true stories.
I think that's like one of the coolest features of the app, because
it's my favorite feature.
Oh my gosh. Because I've already downloaded it. I have my name. I've checked I've been reading a lot of the stories, which are incredible. But the geolocation option, it's just so cool because it really changes your mindset of traveling, of tourism, because you can go to an area and it's so easy to maybe go to the same places, or you're like asking somebody that's traveled there before, but to have like actual stories from people that, even if they're tourists, but even if like people that live there and they wrote about an experience of they were here, it makes it more real. It's like when you read a book about a place, you're kind of more excited to be there because you've somewhat experienced it in a story form, if that makes sense. But I just think it's like, it takes traveling. It's just a whole nother way to experience a place that I mean, I've never seen that in any other form like that. So
I'm glad. I would be worried.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, that's really the essence of how StoryPlace was inspired, because I travel a lot. I try to travel a lot, and I travel with my boyfriend a lot, and we like to get lost, and we like to end up in, random places where suddenly we meet people and listen to their stories. And we have heard the most incredible stories in the most unlikely places. and so that really inspired also this idea, this question more so of how many stories must go untold in the world, or how many stories have you not heard? And this number was just endless. So I really wanted to create that new approach to tourism based on local people's stories, which really makes you a tourist in your own cities, in your own towns even. And so that was really the idea behind the map. And when I see that map and I see all of the stories pop up, it's really something. And then you start zooming out, and you see all the stories everywhere. There's stories in Europe and South Africa and South America. and I really love it. And there's actually a new version coming out in April that has the map very much as an emphasized feature of the app.
Very cool. Do you have any plans of adding on like a language conversion to really break down all barriers?
Yeah.
Stories? Cool.
Yeah, I've really worked on that since from the beginning. It's very difficult because there's really no tools as of yet, surprisingly, and I mean really surprisingly, that can properly translate emotion. And so it's difficult to translate a story because it really doesn't do justice at all to the story itself, especially when you're talking about stories that are written very colloquially, very, low, I don't know, and just very informal tones. And so and they have a lot of attitude. Some of the stories have like humor in the way they're written, and so it really doesn't do justice. And it's also a difficult thing to interfere with someone's story and then translate it and then it not being right. So we've been really trying to look into that and seeing what the best option is. But I am so determined to have language not be a barrier for the story.
For sure. I think that'll be really, really huge. Because I mean, there was a story. It just looked interesting just because I told you I was looking at like the Spanish side because I am trying to learn Spanish. So I'm just trying to stuff more. So like I put one through a translator on Google and I could get a pretty good idea of what one of the stories was about. But no, I think that's really cool. Or even like if you ever did adapt the voice option, like if somebody was bilingual, then they could just
exactly they could translate it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I love that. I'm sure like just having it anonymous, how much more vulnerable people are, which is obviously the point, right? Is just to really be able to dig deep and share from your heart without worry of somebody's going to know who I am or judge me.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that people, I know a lot of people that are like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't have a story. I don't, and then they write it. And it's such a funny feeling because you don't even realize the power of your own story until you write it. And then once you write it and you start seeing people's reactions to it, or when you read your own story, it changes the narrative entirely. A story that was about trauma, suddenly it's like, oh, it's a story about resilience,
Exactly.
And so it lets you own and change your own narrative, which is something very therapeutic.
That's cool. And I love how active you guys have been with it as far as, using your social media or like to create themes for a day for the week, because sometimes I feel like, for me, like if I was going to write something kind of randomly or blog about something every day, sometimes it's like, oh, you've probably written a blog.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I just feel like a daunting task. But like if you have like a topic, it really kind of opens the creativity. It's like, oh, I have experienced this and now I can expand on it when I wouldn't have thought of that before.
Yeah, exactly. That's really something we've been trying to push because I know that it's difficult. It's first of all, when you say, what's your story? It's like, oh my God, the stakes are so high because my story needs to encompass everything. But then if you take the your and you just substitute it with a and you say, tell me a story. Like, tell me a story. And you're like, oh, okay. Okay, let me think. And then you say, well, tell me a story about heartbreak. You're like, oh, well, yeah, let me tell you,
Right.
So the more specific you get in the question, you start realizing that there's so many stories. And so we really focus on trying to make it very easy for people to share and to inspire certain topics and things that are also following the narrative of the year. I never, ever would have imagined how many national days there are in the world. and now I know them all. It's like every week, I work with this girl, her name is Lexi, and she helps me with everything with StoryPlace. And every week she's like, oh, it's the national, Oreo day. I'm like, what? What does that even mean? And so it's been very, very fun.
That's amazing. And as far as like your process of starting an app, obviously you were coming from a place of acting, producing, you're not an app builder. So how was that process and maybe some of the struggles you had, or was it,
it's a struggle every day.
Yeah.
I really didn't know much about tech. I thought I did, and then I realized I knew nothing. And then I also thought it was so much simpler. You see it from the front end and it looks like magic. You're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. And and then you never think of actually what would happen if I flip this app around and actually see what it's made of. it is insane. Like, the work that goes into these things is just incredible.
Coding is a language in itself, right?
It is a language in itself, and it also changes daily. You know, the tools, the technology, everything just changes so quickly that I think that the best quality you can have is just the ability to adapt quickly.
Right.
because it's a very fast changing industry. And so yeah, I mean, it's been a lot. You know, I've wasted a lot of money trying to save money. I've also, you know, trial and error with so many things, with developers, with ideas. You know, also when I first started, I had this whole idea of, you know, the most incredibly complete app. And then I realized that in the app world, you need to start really, really bare. And so I had to take this idea that I had and take off the hat and the clothing and the skin and until it was just bones. And then it was okay. We can start with the bones and put all of those things you want to do, put them on a shelf, and we'll get to them when the time comes. And that to me was very difficult because I was like, no, but I wanted to have this and this and this and this. And I was like, no, but that's not going to work because, you know, you need to start really simple. Make sure the bones do not break, and then you add a little bit of more and more and more. So it's exciting because you really see endless opportunities of growth, but it's also it was new for me. It was very new for me because I had to really hold myself back and learn this whole new way of thinking.
Absolutely. Do you feel like it came out as you originally planned it to, or probably better, right? But like, were there a lot of changes you feel like you had to make, or was it pretty set on to what you first thought?
It was pretty set on. Well, initially I had thought of having voice from the beginning, so that was a big change. But other than that, the rest was pretty set on. My vision was very clear, at least the end result.
Yeah.
And already from launch, which we launched this sort of beta version in December, but we have a completely new completely new version coming out in April. And it's also coming out for Android finally. And so in this version, I mean, I've been playing with this version a lot these past days. And I've realized, you know, now when I go to the actual app that we have now, I'm like, why does it? And now I realize all these things because as much as when it came out, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Now this new version, I'm like, oh yes, this makes so much more sense. Oh, this makes so much more sense. So it's really a constant learning experience. And I'm so excited about this new version because everything about it is just smoother, easier, more user-friendly. The map, as I said, is one of the main pages on it. It's not only like an option that's a little bit hidden like it is now. Now it's actually one of the main focuses. And we've really taken people's feedback. I really appreciate people's feedback. And so I've taken people's feedback and really tried to implement that into this new version. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. When's the new version coming out?
Around the 15th of April.
Awesome.
Almost.
Cool. Awesome. And we probably should have covered this towards the beginning, but was there like a moment that you had the idea for the app that it just came to you? Or, I mean, what even kind of triggered that inspiration for even wanting to start it? Like that first glimpse of, hey, this could be a really cool idea.
Well, so I started producing content based on true stories, and I was very, very shocked and very pleasantly surprised by the fact that true stories have so much power in content creation. And so I sort of began this journey of finding true stories all around the world and finding stories that I wanted to create into films and TV and all that. And then I kept having this dream, which was a very strange dream. And I dream a lot. So it was a dream about me climbing a mountain that was in a blizzard, and it was a very ridiculously dramatic storm. And I was climbing and climbing and climbing. And then I would see a little cave with the fire and a man sitting there, a man that was so old. I can't even explain how old he was. And I would sit next to him and he would just tell me stories, and the stories would change my life. And so I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm gonna travel the world and I'm gonna find this man. And then I realized that was ridiculous. So I decided to turn that idea into a more, I guess, a more realistic goal. And I wanted to also find a place for these stories. I mean, I anyways want to travel the world and find stories, but I wanted somewhere where these stories could actually live and transcend. So that's how I decided to create an app, because taking current trends, I was like, social media should have done this, shouldn't it? I was like, why didn't it do this? And then I started analyzing and then overanalyzing. And then I decided that I would just create it.
That's amazing. No, I love it. And I just think the potential of it, I mean, it's already incredible. And I think just the potential of it to really help a lot of people. I mean, the person writing it, it helps them. The people reading it, it can trigger emotions that helps them break down barriers, to have emotions that they didn't even know they had. Like, I just think it's such a powerful tool. And, for you guys listening, please go download it, go write a review, because reviews are really huge, because the more reviews that she can get, the more eyes can see it. So reviews are huge.
True.
So, so if you guys go do that, do a screenshot, send it to me, and I'll share it.
We'll send it to me too.
Yeah,
please.
Send it to
I always answer, always.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So please, guys, go do that, because it helps so much, and it really is a powerful tool. And Ivana, I know you talked about, a few things coming up for the future. You have the new version coming out. You talked about some of the features, but is there anything else happening in the future that you just want to put out there and share?
Hopefully a lot, but I don't know. I'm producing a lot right now, which I'm excited about. I'm writing, which I love. But StoryPlace is really my baby right now.
That's awesome. No, that's amazing. And what is the best way for people to follow you and StoryPlace on social media? That way they can keep up with all the features, as well as everything that, you're working on as well.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm on at Ivana Maria, Ivana Maria. It's very simple. And that's really where I'm the most active. On Facebook, also at Ivana De Maria official page. And on Twitter, which I abandoned for a while, so I'm slowly coming back, it's at Ivana De Maria. And I always answer messages. I always check them. You can find my email on my socials. I'm very reachable.
Awesome. No, I'll put all of those in the show notes. That way people can just go click, give you an ad, give StoryPlace an ad. And Ivana, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's something that's been your biggest takeaway on your journey so far, but if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
It would be, don't be afraid to fail, which I know is cliche, but it really, my mother always told me something when you have an idea, or you're thinking of doing something, or you're considering something, or trying to choose between two things, she would say, don't stress about it. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen. It's fine. And I'd be like, really? And she said, yeah. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen. She's like, but nothing will happen. She's like, so guess what? If you do something, or if you try, she's like, maybe something will happen. I was like, oh. And so I realized that, you already have the no without doing anything. You start off by having the no, so you might as well try and get that yes.
That's amazing. And that's incredible advice. I love that. That's perfect, Ivana. And just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you. And thank you for creating an incredible app. I'm excited to share it on my end. Like I said, guys, please go download that, write a review. And just thank you, Ivana, for taking time to come on. I loved having you.
Of course. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Ivana. She's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give her a follow on social media to keep up with everything that she's been working on. You can find her social media links and her app link that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Ivana's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Ivana, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you loved it, I hope it inspires you, and most importantly, I hope you take action.